Hey Farrah, how's
Hey.
it going?
Yeah, it's going great. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Copilot. Obviously, everybody's talking about Copilot, and so we were going to talk about Copilot as well. Everybody wants to use agents and AI to kind of unlock productivity, and Copilot has been a huge hype around all this. Of course, being embedded into all the Microsoft Office 365 suite. Um, but it seems like I don't know if you kind of get the same feeling, but it seems like there's something that's kind of lost in the shuffle here. All the kind of security and governance aspect of it, right? If identities and data and the privileges behind it are not properly governed, that puts organizations into kind of exposure into a lot of risk. Um, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the risks that organizations are
Yeah, I
facing
mean,
today?
to echo your point, Hanan, tools like M365 Copilot are extremely powerful, right? And organizations are really keen to be able to benefit from them in the most significant ways, right? They help employees find information faster, it helps you work smarter, get instant answers. But there's a big catch to it, right? And that's what I've been, really kind of uncovering with organizations over the last year, right? Copilot doesn't know the difference between information that someone should have access to and the information they just happen to have access to, right? So if things like oversharing risks aren't addressed, they actually, now with Copilot sitting in the front seat, can cascade into, serious consequences, right? The key to the situation here is you really need to be able to control what Copilot can see. Because if you can't, then you can't control what it can share, right? So things like data leakage at scale, right? There's a real possible that Copilot can surface, data that you didn't know you had access to. What we've seen in Microsoft's own cloud permissions report is that most identities are over permissioned. So, access to sensitive data that you shouldn't have access to is way more common than organizations think. There's real blind spots in terms of compliance. Not every piece of sensitive data is identified, let alone categorized and classified. And so all of these risks kind of accumulate, leading us to a situation where while Copilot can really unlock major productivity gains, it could also put your organization at undue exposure if you're not on top of where your data exists and who has access to it.
Yeah, totally. And you bring up a really good point, right? Because you just named like four or five different teams that are involved in this kind of effort. We got compliance, we got security, probably data. There's the people that IT responsible for Office 365 in general for the organization. So who's responsible for making sure that all this is secure and is actually kind of being governed?
Yeah, I think, it's that's a really interesting question, right? I think in the age of Gen AI, you're seeing a lot more internal stakeholders and people sitting at the table, right? These are not only, security initiatives anymore, these are business enablers, right? So you're seeing a lot of the drive for these initiatives coming from additional and external departments that you wouldn't typically. Now, the big thing to really understand about not just, Microsoft's cloud, but every cloud is the shared responsibility model, right? Like every cloud vendor has it, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, like even if they vary slightly, they're very similar, right? It breaks down in the most simplistic sense that the cloud provider secures the infrastructure, but you as the organization are responsible for everything that you put in it, your apps, your users, and critical to this conversation is your data, right? So if you have a SharePoint document that is shared with everyone except external users and Copilot surfaces it to a user who shouldn't see it, that's not on Microsoft. That's on you as the organization. So, internal security teams, the data teams really need to be on top of, where they have data and all of the critical configurations, settings, and access that has been configured to that data, right? Again, in some cases, you might get some notifications or alerts when you have a misconfiguration in the cloud. But in many cases, maybe in most cases, you won't. And that becomes a critical, gap and a big area of responsibility on the organization to secure the data that they're putting into the cloud.
Yes, so not only that all these stakeholders are kind of involved in this effort, there's also multiple methodologies that need to take place in this, right? Is you got classifying your data classification that goes into that. We got understanding permissions and privileges from a data access perspective. So you got the data access governance perspective, but there's also the identity aspect of it. How do we ensure that identities and users only have the access that they need, and that we can manage our access over time and manage lifecycle management processes properly, so they don't accumulate access more than they need to. Monitoring, you called out monitoring, very, very rightfully so, right? This is a huge and very important piece of it, defining kind of policies on top of that. So there's really kind of a variety of different tools or different methodologies that need to take place in this. How does Netwrix help with that?
Yeah, I think, you hit on a lot of really critically important points that I think get overlooked quite often, right? Is data breaches start with identity, right? Identity has been the perimeter for a really long time. And, it's never been anywhere, it's never been more obvious than in places like Active Directory, right? I think VentureBeat said it best, right? They said, whoever controls Active Directory controls the company. So, Netwrix is positioned in a really unique space where we are at the intersection of data and identity, right? So when we're talking about the security posture of your data and who can access it, it's critically important to understand also the security posture around your identities, right? I think when we're looking at what we do here at Netwrix today, we're really helping with all of the key milestones that you need to achieve, and we're helping you achieve them on an ongoing basis, right? DSPM is really the readiness layer for Copilot. So with one secure DSPM, we help organizations discover and classify sensitive data that exists across M365. We're able to not only discover where data exists, but who has access to that data, and monitor on an ongoing basis who is accessing that data, what are they actually doing, which is critically important to understand and to ultimately achieve a least privilege model. Helping to actually correct excessive permissions in the case that there is unnecessary data exposure. And again, the ability to continuously assess risk on an ongoing basis and providing AI-based remediation assistance is critically important. So now not only are we telling you and highlighting, here are the problems that we've uncovered, we're also giving you all of the tools that you need to rectify. And so similarly on the data side, we're doing this continuous assessment with tools like Ping Castle integrated directly into OneSecure. We're continuously assessing the security posture of your identities as well. All the while, making sure that you have your audit ready reports, so, you feel confident going forward. I think, really in these cases where we want to allow Copilot or enable Copilot deployments with ease, right? We need to frame security as an enabler, right? It is what helps to accelerate the adoption of these technologies by being able to prove security through metrics, right? Without metrics such as reduction in excessive permissions or how much of your data is classified, the debate stays really emotional. But when you have the metrics to prove that you're improving your security on an ongoing basis, you can prove value, especially in these AI-based projects in days.
Yeah, and so that's not only just addressing all these items one by one. Is really kind of having a holistic view of a program like approach when you can actually track your progress over time. And I think in a lot of cases that what DSPM helps you do, right? You can kind of measure your posture over time, not only from a data perspective, but from an identity perspective too. And from an identity infrastructure perspective, as you called out, an ITDR perspective. It's really impressive to see how we cover a very wide range of these vectors, right? Starting from the data, and understanding where the data is, and classifying the data through the identity lens, all the way to monitoring real-time activities and being able to remediate on some of the insights as well. So it really is an end-to-end process. Um, Really starting from going down even to the endpoint itself, and monitoring in real time against data exfiltration.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many moving pieces here, and being able to provide that unified view and consistent control across each of these attack surfaces is critically important. So, not only are we helping to discover where data exists within your SharePoint Online environment, but inevitably that data is going to move. It's going to move throughout your organization, and it's going to end up on an endpoint somewhere. So, making sure that we have the ability to protect the data as it's moving, and also conversely, making sure that you're able to protect sensitive data from leaving your organization to these chatbots, right? So it's really important having a consistent set of controls at every point of exfiltration possible.
Right, and it kind of it expands. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we're looking at the typical approach to securing data, we're doing it, we're seeing vendors do it in a very siloed fashion where we have your DSPM that is looking at the security posture of your data. We have your ISPM, which is new and up and coming and looking at the security posture of your identities. We have your CSPM, which is looking at your cloud security posture. So it's these three very segmented and siloed experiences when in reality, they all need to be uh, working together in lockstep so you ensure that a weak or risky identity doesn't lead to the exfiltration of your data. So this is all to say that when we're looking at data access, at Netwrix, we're looking at the complete story. So we're not only looking at how a data gets direct access to a file, there is a read permission or they're a member of some group, right? We are unpacking and unraveling every single layer to help you really understand how or who can gain access, right? So showing you all of the edges of access, whether that be having permissions within Active Directory itself. If I can reset your password, then I can effectively gain access to all of the data that you have access to. And that level of visibility is not always obvious, right? And so here at Netwrix, we're really going above and beyond, making sure that the story of data security is complete and comprehensive, no matter where the data exists, no matter who has access to it. There's a lot that we're continuing to build to make answering these significant or these very regular questions a lot easier. So being able to quickly identify where is your riskiest locations within your organization, right? Which SharePoint site should you absolutely not enable Copilot on? These are really, really important. I think sometimes it may not be obvious, right? Which users should we not enable it on? Maybe we trust, Mark in accounting, but there are a lot of risks to his identity. He shares a password with 7 other users and he's an admin. Like there's a lot of different, corners that need to be uncovered. And, that's what we're doing here on Netwrix and providing you with the actual confidence that you need when you're exploring AI tools like M365 Copilot.
And so let's talk about some of the new things that we're delivering now or delivering soon, especially around Copilot. So how does some of these things kind of help me start on my journey to Copilot readiness?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's a ton of work that we're doing and that we've done over the last year as well to really deliver this story. And I'm really excited about what we have coming in Q3 and following in Q4, right? So, we're working on much more tailored experiences and dashboards so you can have better visibility and complete visibility into your sensitive data footprint. So, not only understanding not only showing you this information in just audit and compliance reports, but providing you with the ability to drill in. So if I'm telling you that you have major risks in your accounting share or in your accounting site, being able to quickly drill in and understand every one of those risks, and with our AI assisted remediation, having that ability to address those. We also have a number of additional risks that we're looking into, as it pertains to exposed data within SharePoint. So again, not only looking for areas where everyone but external users has access, but also going levels further where we're seeing, all right, well, where are there organizational, wide sharing links? Where is there external sharing of sensitive content? Who is accessing sensitive data most frequently, and is that abnormal or is that expected? Having that ongoing assessment and monitoring is really what we're continuing to build on top of, and really building out meaningful visual ways to represent that data.
Great. And we're also, if I'm not mistaken, kind of working now to package that in a more directed way to create a specific tailored experience for Copilot readiness. So admins can really assess how ready their environment is and how strong the security posture is before they start adopting those AI technologies and potentially exposing their organization to risks, right?
Yeah, I think, areas where we're continuing to expand is in that risk assessment experience, where we know that it's really important to not only tell organizations, hey, you are at risk, but giving them all the tools that they need to address those risks and the confidence that they need to ensure that they're actually making improvements to their security, right? So within Ping Castle, we have this great maturity experience, and we're going to be baking that, more natively into OneSecure. So being able to provide you with a DSPM or risk score and showing you exactly where you need to focus in the short term to make the most gain. So there's a lot of really exciting things that we're doing and that we're going to be releasing over the next year.
Excellent.